The night I realized my husband wasn't planning a life with me, but a strategy around me, I stopped being his wife. I didn't realize it at the time, but that moment changed everything. It started with a simple sentence. "You should have gone before helping this fool count other people's walls." She left without another word. Nathan stayed, of course. Men with big financial dreams always believe one more explanation will fix everything. "Elena," he said softly, "please." I was trying to think ahead for us. I looked at him for a long time. Then I asked the question that had been burning inside me. "When did you start saying us when you really meant asset?" He looked genuinely wounded. That's the thing about some betrayers. They feel exposed, as if it's an injury done to them. He slept in the guest room that night. I didn't cry. Walter made tea at 11:30 p.m. and handed me a mug without saying much. After a while, he spoke. "Your grandmother used to say, the trouble with polished men is you can see yourself in them, until they crack." I laughed then, a tired, broken little laugh. "Did you know?" I asked him. "Not all of it," he said quietly. Enough. He had heard pieces over weeks. Nathan on the phone in the garage, Marissa visiting while I was at work, words like transition plan, care evaluation, unlock the property, and once she calms down. Walter hadn't said anything at first. He wanted to be sure before he handed me that kind of pain. That detail undid me more than anything. He had been protecting me quietly, while I was still protecting my marriage out loud. The next morning I called Nora. She isn't just a wise friend. She's my late mother's cousin, a retired family attorney who listens once and goes straight to the heart of the problem. When I told her what happened, she said 3 things, calm and clear. Do not move out. Do not sign anything. And change every password before lunch. I did all 3. By noon, the pattern was clear. Emails, secret appointments with an elder care consultant, lender conversations about refinancing, a spreadsheet with cold contingencies. If Walter transitions by Q3, downstairs opens. If Elena resists, frame as burnout or safety. I wasn't his partner. I was his plan. I didn't argue with Nathan. I didn't scream. I didn't even raise my voice. I stayed silent, and I prepared. That silence was the best decision I ever made. 2 days later, I invited him to dinner Thursday night to talk calmly. I wasn't inviting him to fix anything. I was inviting him to reveal everything. He accepted right away. That told me he still believed he could talk his way back into control. Walter insisted on being there. Nora came too, and so did my neighbor Mrs. Alvarez from across the street, a woman whose hobby is spotting manipulative men from a mile away. Nathan walked in carrying a bottle of wine. That detail still makes me smile. He thought this was reconciliation theater. The table was already set. Lasagna, fresh bread, water glasses shining under the light, and a plain legal folder resting beside Nora's elbow. By the time he sat down, the outcome was already decided. Nathan noticed the folder and gave a careful smile. "What's this? An intervention?" "No," I said quietly. "An ending." He sat down slowly. Walter said grace with that deadly sincerity only old men who've seen real life can manage. We ate almost normally for about 10 minutes. Then Nora placed 3 printed documents on the table. The elder care inquiry, the lender emails, and the budget page, the one that mentioned Walter's transition and my possible resistance framed as burnout. Nathan went completely still. For a moment I saw him calculating, not guilt, not regret, but angles. New ways to spin it. New ways out. Elena, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. You went through my private files? Nora answered before I could. Material accessed through shared devices inside a marital home while uncovering financial coercion tied to inherited property is not the hill you want to die on tonight. Mrs. Alvarez took a slow sip of water and simply said, Nathan looked at Walter, hoping for some kind of male understanding. Walter only looked back at him and said, Try honesty. It'll be your first new trick. Then Nathan turned to me. I wasn't going to do anything without talking to you. I actually laughed, a real laugh this time. That's interesting, I said, because most people start the talking before the planning. His jaw tightened. You're acting like I had some evil scheme. What do you call a spreadsheet with plans for removing my grandfather and pressuring me through burnout and safety concerns? He had no answer. Nora slid one more document across the table. A post-nup proposal draft prepared 2 months earlier. It talked about business stabilization, shared debt protection, and the future disposition of the primary residence. My house. My inherited house. Nathan's face changed then. Not guilty. Cornered. That's when I knew. Whatever love he still claimed to feel for me had long accepted a back seat to access. He stood up. I made mistakes, he said, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. Walter slammed his palm on the table so hard the glasses shook. No, he said, voice low and final. You brought demolition into her house and called it weatherproofing. For a second, nobody breathed. Then Nathan looked at me with exhausted resentment and said the words that finally killed whatever was left. I was trying to build something for our future, and you keep acting like this house is some kind of shrine. I stood up too. It is not a shrine, I said calmly. It is my home. And the fact that you can't tell the difference is exactly why this marriage is over. Silence. Clean. Final. Merciful silence. Nathan left that night without the wine. He texted a few times over the next week, first angry, then sentimental, then practical again, which somehow hurt the most. I didn't answer until Nora had already filed for legal separation. When I finally replied, I sent one message. You didn't try to build a future with me. You tried to engineer one around me. He never responded directly, maybe because there was nothing left to optimize. Walter stayed with me through the separation. He actually got stronger, walked farther, complained more, which we took as the best possible sign. One Sunday morning about 2 months later, I found him in the kitchen again before dawn, sitting in the half-light with his coffee. This time I turned on the lamp. He looked up and grunted. Good, he said. No more dark. I smiled. No more dark. Nathan's company folded by the end of summer. Marissa disappeared completely. Mrs. Alvarez still brings over empanadas and warns me whenever she hears a man in the neighborhood say, just being practical, in that certain tone. As for me, I kept the house. I kept Walter. I kept my name. And in the detached garage, the one Nathan once measured for future profit, I built something completely different. Not a rental unit, not a studio for investors. A quiet balance and recovery space for my physical therapy patients who need private home sessions after surgery, the ones who aren't ready for crowded clinics yet. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive as loud revenge. Sometimes it arrives as correct use. Walter likes to sit just outside that garage on clear afternoons, cane across his knees, watching patients come and go like a foreman supervising integrity. People ask if I regret not seeing it sooner. Sometimes I do. But regret is only useful when it teaches better sight. Now I listen harder when love starts sounding like strategy. I pay attention when someone talks about people as leverage, homes as assets, care as transition, and consent as alignment. And I never again ignore an old man sitting in the dark. Because the night my grandfather told me not to turn on the kitchen light, I thought he was warning me about a moment. He wasn't. He was warning me about a man I hadn't learned to see yet. Looking back, that was my quiet revenge. Not on him, but on the woman I used to be. The one who was too afraid to see the cracks in the polished surface. And in letting her go, I finally came home to myself.